You may have heard the saying that opposites attract each other, and we see in couples, when we help couples, that this is the truth, that people are attracted for their differences. For example, when someone comes to my office and this person is an introvert, the majority of times this person is gonna be with someone who is an extrovert. So they really attract each other. But today I don't want to talk about this kind of opposite, but another type of opposites that create problems in relationships. And this is the person who we call the avoidant and the other who we call the anxious. So when there are problems between couples, most of the times one of them is avoidant. In other words, this person, uh, when there is some problem, this person will withdraw, and there is always a positive intention in it. And the positive intention is like to avoid problems, confrontation, arguments. But for the other person, it might be kind of dismissing and neglecting and really not being attentive and being connected. So for the person who is anxious, this person will now protest this distance and will complain and will criticize and will uh, insist and control and demand, and this will cause this person to withdraw even more, and they become in this loop which feeds the problem and they cannot get out of it. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how this problem happens in our childhood and also in past relationships. Because usually, when we have this problem in our adulthood and we have these different patterns, it's based on past experiences that we had in our childhood and in other relationships, and that we took this stance that some of us might have gone to be anxious or to seek or to demand or to confront, and the other might try to escape, to avoid the problem. And there is a theory in psychology that we call the attachment theory. And this theory was created by John Bowlby, who in the 50s, right after the World War, he was hired to study children and how they reacted to the problems, to the war problems. Children who were in hospitals and they were separated from their parents for some time or became orphans, how they had problems because of that separation and how those problems affected their future. So the after that there was a woman called Mary Ainsworth, and she studied babies in their relationship with mothers, and there was a an investigation that she did, which was called the strange situation, in which uh, babies and their mothers were in a room with a strange person to the baby, and the mother would uh, go out of the room for 1 minute, and they observed how the child reacted, and then the mother would come back, and then they realized that there were three types of children. One type, which was like 60% of the children, they were secure, and we call the ones that had a secure attachment. And there were the insecure ones that were divided in two types. One type were the anxious, and the other type were the avoidants. Okay, so these which were secure, when mom left the room, they would be anxious and they would cry. And when mom would come back and mom would comfort the child, so the child would accept the comfort from their mother, and the child would resume playing in a little while. On the other hand, the insecure ones, they were different. So the anxious ones, they became very upset when mom left the room. And when mom came back, they had a hard time accepting comfort from the mom. And they would still be upset for a long time and they would protest. And there were the avoidant ones. And these ones seem not to care very much when mom left the room. And when mom came back, they would kind of ignore their mothers. And then they thought, Mary Ainsworth thought, well, does it mean that they really don't care? They are very independent. And then they took the vital signs of these children, these babies, and actually they were very stressed. And what had happened is that they had adapted to past situations that they were disappointed with mom because they didn't feel really protected and connected. They didn't feel secure with their mothers. And what they did is that they realized that it wasn't really worth trying to connect with mother, and they just ignored and accepted their fate and tried to be independent. So they lost their trust in their mothers. So it had a lot to do with the style of the mother, because the secure babies, they had learned that they could trust their mothers, that the mothers would be present for them, would be responsive to their cues. So mother was very attentive and tuned into them. And when they were stressed, if they were hungry, if they were crying, mom would very soon comfort them and would be present for them, and then they would feel secure, protected. On the other hand, the insecure ones, their mothers were not very good in terms of reading their cues, and was their mothers wouldn't be very tuned into their needs and not very responsive to them. Maybe mom would kind of just neglect or be not very connected to them, and or maybe mom would be upset and irritated, like feel like the baby was controlling her. And then uh, what happened is that babies noticed that they couldn't trust their mothers. And the anxious ones, they would protest this disconnection and would try to connect with mom and would seek mom and would insist. And on the other hand, the babies that were avoidant, they just adapt and they thought, well, it's not worth really trying. It's nothing's gonna happen. So now let's go forward and think about adults. And there's a modality which is called emotionally focused therapy that studies these different types of attachment in adults, because they found that we as adults, we have the same needs that babies and children have to be connected, to be attached to another human being. And that some of us, because of past experiences, maybe from childhood or maybe from other relationships, we became insecure, and some of us becomes anxious or we protest when we feel disconnected, and our protest goes in the form of complaints, criticism, controlling demands, and we insist, and maybe we become jealous. And if we are in a relationship with someone who is avoidant, this person, our protest will confirm to this person that he or she shouldn't trust us because we don't love them. We are protesting, we're complaining, we're criticizing. So then it drives them away, it pushes them away, and they withdraw from us. And what happens? Then we become anxious, and we miss them, and we are afraid that we are losing them, and then we protest even further, and maybe we protest with a louder voice. What happens is that they withdraw even more, and then it becomes a cycle, and then we are in this cycle, and we cannot get out of this cycle. And we therapists who work with couples using this modality that I talked, which is emotionally focused therapy, we try to show the couple the cycle. We show the role that they are playing the cycle that they were not aware of, that they were creating unintentionally. And the purpose is that when they have a an awareness of the cycle, that they can see it, then they start getting out of this cycle. So they become like a team that work together, um, and they will now fight the cycle. See, the enemy is not each other, the enemy is the cycle. So they together now work towards getting out of this cycle. Now, there's a lot to talk about this, and I cannot do in this video because this video is kind of a little bit long already. But I want to ask you to stay tuned because I'm going to talk more about this.